David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, Chapter 24, My First Dissipation. It was a wonderfully fine thing to have that lofty castle to myself, and to feel, when I shut my outer door like Robinson Crusoe, when he had got into his fortification and pulled his ladder up after him. It was a wonderfully fine thing to walk about town with the key of my house in my pocket. It was a wonderfully fine thing to ring Mrs. Crupp up, gasping from the depths of the earth, when I wanted her, and when she was disposed to come. All this, I say, was wonderfully fine, but I must say, too, that there were times when it was very dreary. I was taking my coffee and roll in the morning before going to the Commons, and I may observe in this place that it is surprising how much coffee Mrs. Crupp used, and how weak it was, considering, when Steerforth himself walked in, to my unbounded joy. "My dear Steerforth," cried I began to think I should never see you again." I showed him over the establishment, not omitting the pantry, with no little pride, and he commended it highly. "I tell you what, old boy," he added, "I shall make a town-house of this place, unless you give me a notion to quit." This was a delightful hearing. I told him if he wanted for that, he would have to wait till doomsday. "You'll come back for dinner," said I. "I can't, upon my life. There's nothing I should like better, but I must remain with two fellows. We are 3 off together tomorrow morning." "Then bring them here for dinner," I returned. "Do you think they would come?" "Oh, they would come fast enough," said Steerforth. "But we should inconvenience you. You had better come and dine with us somewhere." I would not by any means consent to this, for it occurred to me that I really ought to have a little housewarming, and that there never could be a better opportunity. I had a new pride in my rooms after his approval of them, and burned with a desire to develop their utmost resources. I therefore made him promise positively in the names of his 2 friends, and we appointed 6 o'clock as the dinner hour. These preparations happily completed, I bought a little dessert in Covent Garden Market, and gave a rather extensive order at a retail wine merchant's in that vicinity. When I came home in the afternoon and saw the bottles drawn up in a square on the pantry floor, they looked so numerous, though there were 2 missing, which made Mrs. Crupp very uncomfortable, and I was absolutely frightened at them. One of Steerforth's friends was named Granger, and the other Markham. They were both very gay and lively fellows. Granger something older than Steerforth, Markham youthful-looking, and I should say not more than 20. I observed that the latter had always spoke of himself indefinitely as a man, and seldom or never in the first person singular. "A man might get on very well here, Mr. Copperfield," said Markham, meaning himself. "It's not a bad situation," said I, "and the rooms are really commodious." "I hope you have both brought appetites with you," said Steerforth. "Upon my honour," returned Markham, "town seems to sharpen a man's appetite. A man is hungry all day long. A man is perpetually eating." Being a little embarrassed at first, and feeling much too young to preside, I made Steerforth take the head of the table when dinner was announced, and seated myself opposite to him. Everything was very good, and we did not spare the wine, and he exerted himself so brilliantly to make the thing pass off well that there was no pause in our festivity. I began by being singularly cheerful and light-hearted. All sorts of half-forgotten things to talk about came rushing into my mind, and made me hold forth in a most unwonted manner. I laughed heartily at my own jokes and everybody else's, called Steerforth to order for not passing the wine, made several engagements to go to Oxford, announced that I meant to have a dinner party exactly like that one until a week further notice, and madly took so much snuff out of Granger's box that I was obliged to go into the pantry and have a private fit of sneezing 10 minutes long. I went on by passing the wine faster and faster yet, and continually starting up with a corkscrew to open more wine long before any was needed. I proposed Steerforth's health. I broke my glass in going round the table to shake hands with him, and I said in 2 words, "Steerforth, you're the guiding star of my existence." I went on by finding suddenly that somebody was in the middle of a song. Markham was the singer, and he sang, "When the heart of a man is depressed with care." He said when he had sung it he would give us "Woman." I took objection to that, and I couldn't allow it. I said it was not a respectful way of proposing the toast, and I would never permit that toast to be drunk in my house otherwise than as "the ladies." I was very high with him, mainly I think because I saw Steerforth and Granger laughing at me, or at him, or both of us. He said a man was not to be dictated to. I said a man was. He said a man was not to be insulted then. I said he was right. They're never under my roof, where the laws were sacred and the laws of hospitality paramount. He said it was no derogation from a man's dignity to confess that I was a devilish good fellow. I instantly proposed his health. Somebody was smoking. We were all smoking. I was smoking and trying to suppress a rising tendency to shudder. Somebody was leaning out of my bedroom window, refreshing his forehead against the cool stone of the parapet, and feeling the air upon his face. It was myself. I was addressing myself as Copperfield and saying, "Why did you try to smoke? You might have known you couldn't do it." Now somebody was unsteadily contemplating his features in the looking-glass. This was I too. That was I too. I was very pink in the looking-glass. My eyes had a vacant appearance, and my hair, only my hair, nothing else, looked drunk. Somebody said to me, "Let us go to the theatre, Copperfield." The theatre, to be sure, the very thing. Come along. Owing to some confusion in the dark, the door was gone. I was feeling for it in the window curtains when Steerforth, laughing, took me by the arm and led me out. We went downstairs, one behind another. Near the bottom, somebody fell and rolled down. Somebody else said it was Copperfield. I was angry at that false report until, finding myself on my back in the passage, I began to think there might be some foundation for it. Then I was being ushered into one of the boxes and found myself saying something as I sat down, and people about me crying, "Silence!" to somebody, and ladies casting indignant glances at me. And what? Yes, Agnes sitting in the seat before me, in the same box, a lady and a gentleman beside her, who I did not know, or who I didn't know. "Agnes," I said thickly. "Lord bless my Agnes." "Hush, pray," she answered. I could not conceive why. "You disturb the company. Look at the stage." I tried, on her injunction, to fix it, and to hear something of what was going on there, but quite in vain. I looked at her again by and by, and saw her shrink into her corner, and put her gloved hand to her forehead. "Agnes," said I, "I'm afraid you aren't well." Yes, do not mind me, Trotwood," she returned. "Listen, are you going away soon?" "Am I going away soon?" I repeated. "Yes." I had a stupid intention of replying that I was going to wait to hand her downstairs. I suppose I expressed it somehow, for after she looked at me attentively for a little while, she appeared to understand, and replied in a low tone, "I know you will do as I ask you. If I tell you I am very earnest in it, go away now, Trotwood, for my sake, and ask your friends to take you home." She had so far improved me by the time that I was angry with her. I felt ashamed, and with a short "Bory," which I intended for a good night, I got up and went away. They followed, and I stepped at once out of the box door into my bedroom, where only Steerforth was with me, helping me undress, and where I was by turns telling him that Agnes was my sister, and abjuring him to bring the corkscrew that I might open another bottle of wine. And that is the end of chapter 24.